Hello everyone, this is Gautam Kumar, co-founder at FarEye, and today I am at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. While FarEye is working with 150 global brands and largely with retailers, big and bulky brands, courier express parcel companies, but today I have very special guest, Charles Brewer. Charles, when are you going to introduce yourself?
Sure. So first of all, Gautam, again, thank you so much. A great pleasure to see you. So in simple terms, my name's Charles and I'm the Group CEO for Pos Malaysia, which is a great company, a great brand that's been around in Malaysia now for more than 200 years. I think we're one of the oldest companies, both in Malaysia and Southeast Asia. We have more than 18,000 employees, 10,000 vehicles, a very broad product set. And from me and from my perspective, I think I've spent now something like 38 or 40 years in this industry, having worked very long time with DHL and then most recently with Canada Post. And I came to Post Malaysia in August 2021.
Wow, wonderful, Charles. I'm sure today we'll learn in the conversation about all your journey of 4 decades, I can say, in the world of transforming the entire a courier express and parcel business. And, intelligence, network, experience. Wanted to understand, I'll jump directly to the question. What is the biggest pressure point for the leaders when you're talking about the courier express parcel companies all across the globe that you have seen at multiple times?
So I think all postal operators and pretty much all courier operators in the same breath are facing very similar challenges. So a massively changing environment. If you think about the last sort of 5 or 10 years, the markets pretty much in every country have changed quite significantly with new entrants, a lot of PE and VC funds coming in, more and more competitors, rising customer demand, want it faster, more visibility. So the world around us is changing super fast. And as you mentioned, when I came back into Post Malaysia in August 2021, we certainly had a significant uphill challenge across many different facets, I hasten to add, which we've been very, very much focused on. So in simple form, a really fast and rapidly changing environment driven by customer, driven by competitors, driven by regulators, driven by our own sort of history and bureaucracy and labor and so on and so forth. And I suspect the next few years will be equally challenging and demanding.
No, like you rightly, connected all those regulators to the customer demand. And when you're talking about the changing world, what is the cost of inaction?
I think the biggest danger is doing nothing. And I know it sounds really obvious that any company should be doing something, but you'd be amazed at how many really aren't facing up to what is a really challenging environment. So I think massive cost of inertia, massive cost of not doing anything. And certainly, I'm bringing it back to Post Malaysia, as I mentioned, when I came back in 2021, the business was facing challenges on many different fronts. Some of that to do with transformation, some of that to do with legacy, some of that to do with our history, some of that to do with inertia and not necessarily taking proactive steps. But the reality was we had to change fast. And again, to your question, I think all organizations need to constantly be looking at what's coming around the corner, where are their customers going, where are the industries going, where are the regulators going, where are their employees going, what do they demand, and be constantly adjusting. And I'm sure we're going to get to it. Technology sits very much at the heart of that transformation for us.
Right, and when you're dealing with a multiple category of the product, then definitely being part of the regulations and the way dynamism are changing, on the customer demand side, they want everything now.
So as I said earlier, the world around us has changed really rapidly. And again, I hasten to add, if we think about the rate of change over the last 2 or 3 years, and just think of the next 1 or 2 years, it's going to be beyond most of our comprehension. And that's why we work so hard to try to stay at the front of the wave with great partners like FarEye.
Oh, thank you so much. And recently I was going through one of your podcasts, and there was very powerful statement that you were making about, there's no glitter without the basics, right? And sitting over here, when at Pos Malaysia, the way you have done the transformation in the last 4 years, what are those basics and fundamentals?
So like I mentioned, when I first came back in, and no harm, no foul, it's just a reality. Our core business wasn't necessarily particularly great. As our core business is delivering mail and parcel and delivering it very efficiently, very effectively, and on time with all the bells and whistles. So when I first came in, one of the sort of mandates from the board was, hey, transformation and turnaround and digital transformation we used very often, that lovely buzz phrase. So, and I made the point to them that, in order for us to think about tomorrow, we need to get the basics right in the first place. So for us, it was getting them critically, and many other areas too, but critically moving our mail and parcel service back into a competitive space. So, in those days, I think if I remember rightly, our mail and parcel service was around 51%, something like that. So that's 1 in 2 shipments being delivered on time. I mean, you're not going to survive if you 1 or 2,
and it's
1
not
in 2.
far away. It's like only 2021, right?
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. So that was absolutely one of the most critical things. I mean, there were many foundational things we needed to really course correct very quickly, but definitely mail and parcel.
What is the current number?
Well, the good news is, and I hasten to add, and as you mentioned at the start, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've never ever seen a group of individuals so quickly move the performance from what was completely substandard to now being best in class. So we now run at 94, 95% on time. Our mail runs at 98% on time.
Wow, that's really amazing, Charles.
It is fantastic. And again, nothing to do with me, everything to do with the operations team. And fundamentally, if you get the basics right, you're then able to start, to your point earlier, you're then able to start sort of sprinkling the glitter, the pixie dust on the things that make a difference for our customer experience. But if you don't deliver the parcel on time, everything else is irrelevant. Yeah.
No, interesting. And like when you're doing digital transformation and you're talking about operations, it's going to resonate, like it's changing the culture.
Yeah.
Right. And like, could you put some more lights, because a lot of leaders in our industry wanted to understand like what does that mean, and like if you can also put light how FarEye contributed.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we focused on, certainly at the start of the sort of transformation, was making sure we had the right culture. And what I mean by that is, whether it be sustainability, whether it be digitalization, whether it be new technologies, whatever you're doing, you have to appreciate that, and in Post Malaysia's case, we have 18,000 employees, and 18,000 employees are going to go through a change curve of some shape or form. And that's true regardless of whatever the transformation or whatever the change is, there is going to be a change curve. And by change curve, what I mean is, and most people would understand what the change curve is, but there's a huge level of resistance. So everybody goes through that sort of resistance. Then you go through sort of rationalization and realization that what you've got is better, hopefully. And then you get through the other side of the curve where people say, I see the value. So it doesn't matter which transformation you're doing. You have to start with your people, and you have to start with the culture of the organization, making sure the culture of the organization is open to change, which, as I said earlier, we have significant amount of change we've gone through and more to come. So you have to really focus on getting that right as best you can. It's a journey. I get asked very often around, what's the end point for culture transformation? There is no end point. Yeah, culture transformation will be forever, an infinity.
Process.
And to your question, and if we take our sort of reasonably significant leap of faith to move off of our core platform onto FarEye. I mean, that was a big piece of in terms of our users, 10,000 sort of postmen and couriers who are using that application for first mile, mid mile, last mile, and moving off of what an application we've had for a very long time. That was not particularly great, I hasten to add, but we'd had for a very long time, is a huge change. Yeah. And if you think again about that cultural change, that transformation change, a huge amount of resentment, a lot of hard work. We had to start with the why on a regular basis. Why are we making this change? What's the value? Why, what's the value to our customer? What's the value to our employees? But I think two parts to it. When you're going through a transformation that includes a partner, and in this case, FarEye, and I've been asked many times, why FarEye, and you and I go back many years. Aside from the product, which I'm sure we'll get to, if you talk to the team that worked on that change, one of the things you'll hear consistently said is the way in which your team worked to help us through that change program. And that for us is true partnership. You need to have both people on both sides of the house who are working as hard as they can to deliver the value and deliver the benefit, because people are on that sort of resistance stage at the earlier part, and it takes time and effort to get people through it. And like I said, I think together we've achieved an awful lot, and I'm sure we're going to do an awful lot going forward. The market is really competitive today, much more competitive than it ever was. And therefore, differentiation for your employees and differentiation for your customer becomes increasingly more important. And that differentiation doesn't come from me. It comes from things like technology. It comes from things like using data. It comes from things like having the route optimization. It comes from things like having auto pickup assignments. It's doing things that create value for our employees, but also create significant value for our customers.
And Charles, when like we're talking about this industry, like this is under like a lot of tremendous cost pressure. At the same time, like when you're talking about the sustainability and the sustainable deliveries, a lot of leaders are going to think about, hey, like in the cost pressure era, like how this project can be balanced, and like it should not be like a side project.
Absolutely,
right?
it's critical. It's core. One of the things that we've done, and again, your FarEye has helped us tremendously with, is drive up productivity. So, putting some numbers around that, we used to, when I first came in, on average, do around 35 parcels a day per courier, which if you work in this industry, you'll know that that's quite low. And there may be reasons for that, but it's pretty low. And we've doubled that and then some more in productivity. So what technology and what FarEye has helped us to do is to scale capacity, to increase capacity without increasing cost. I remember some years ago, one of my previous CEOs said the problem with e-commerce is for every one shipment you have to add $1 of cost. And it is true to a certain degree that it's not, again, the selling prices come down quite significantly and the cost for delivery is going up. So you have to look for efficiency. You have to look for more productivity. And I know that sounds hard for many of our employees, but how do we do that? We do that with partnerships like FarEye. So that, in fact, I was just talking to one of the operators this morning to give you a real life example. As you know, in FarEye, there's a returns application or returns module. And historically, I mean, in e-commerce for parcel, there was a lot of returns. And historically, on the legacy system that we used to use, we would have to scan each individual item to each individual destination in the local facilities across Malaysia. And that takes a lot of people, a lot of time, and a lot of cost. And with FarEye, we're able to bag to a center, to one single point, without having to do it individually. The system allocates it back to the right location. So as one example, that's allowed us to take out a significant cost, man-hour cost, by using technology, in the same way that in the last mile, we've moved from 35 now to an average around 90 parcels per person per day. And again, that's a combination of people.
90 parcels per person per day?
Per courier per day, yeah. So
from 35?
From 35, yes.
It's almost like a 3x, right?
It's amazing.
What are the other key matrices that you tend to monitor, be it like a FarEye or similar digital transformation? We've built our strategy across 3 pillars. And so everything we do has to lead back to delivering on that strategy. So pillar number 1 is having highly motivated, highly engaged, and safe employees. So anything we do has to tick that box. Second one is delivering a great service and delighting our customers. And the third one is delivering a profitable network. So those 3 strategic pillars. And again, notwithstanding what I said around the change curve, we regularly go back now and do dipstick surveys with our couriers and postmen saying, hey, how happy are you with FarEye? And the most recent survey, I think it came out something like 9 out of 10 employees said it was really fantastic. So we're hitting a high level of employee satisfaction. And that's important, because if they're not happy to go out on the road because the tools we give them don't match what they need to do, doesn't help them be better, help them to have a better life, then probably going to get even more resistance. So again, with any technology that we deploy or any initiative we deploy, we want to know whether it's ticking that box. That's number 1. Number 2 is obviously with things like route orchestration, obviously with things like less bagging, less sorting, that ticks the box on safety. So our safety numbers have improved by around 20% each year. We've reduced our safety instances by 20%. And again, technology plays a part in that. So for example, let me give you an example. We can look at data to see how we use telematics as well as obviously with FarEye. So we can look at telematics and FarEye data to see how our drivers are driving and where they're driving. Yeah, and that sounds obvious, but many companies don't do it, and it helps us to
look at fundamental safety concerns or safety risks. So again, FarEye plays to that. The second one is delivering a great service and delighting our customer. And as I mentioned earlier, we've moved from 50, 51%, something like that. I think it was 48 at one point, actually. But anyway, we moved from around 50% on time to now best in class in the market. And again, it's a combination of a lot of things, but clearly FarEye played a key part in that. So our NPS scores, our net promoter scores, so we look at net promoter for delivery, we look for net promoter for retail, we look at it across a number of different touch points for our customer, but for delivery, where FarEye critically plays, we started the journey. Our delivery NPS was around 30%. It might even be 30% positive. It may even be lower than that. I have to go and check it actually, but it was low. Yeah, okay. I mean it's not a disaster, because globally that 30 is not the world's worst, but it's not where I would want it. Today it's around 77. So the customer experience has gone up significantly. How did FarEye play a part? WhatsApp messaging, instant digital proof of delivery, real-time tracking. So that technology, going back to what I said earlier, enables us to provide a happier customer. We get a happier customer by using technology. And then, like I said, lastly, the critical measure would be things like our financial performance. How much is it costing us to deliver? And as I mentioned earlier, our productivity has gone up over 100%. So we're getting a lower unit cost of delivery on the back of, again, leveraging technology.
Charles, if you'll have to see, if you can fast forward another 5 years, because you have seen the journey last 4 decades, how do you see the massive impact and expectation in our industry, Courier Express, and largely for the postal logistics? Yeah. Because once upon a time, I remember almost 12 years before, the 100% volume is coming to less than 1% now. So how do you see next 5 years for
continued
the postal?
significant change? Yeah. I think our industry is going to go through significant and continued change. I know I've said that quite a few times, but I genuinely believe that. And as we look at sort of the industry today and how it's changed over the last sort of 5, 7, 8 years, I don't think the race is finished by any stretch of the imagination. So further consolidation, potentially further competitors, different business models, significantly different business models to do the same thing. Like I said earlier, humanoids and tech. I think tech and data is going to become more and more relevant. We from a Pos Malaysia perspective, it's fairly straightforward. We're moving from being a mail company that also does parcels to being a parcel company that also does mail. That's fundamentally the shift. And I say this all the time to our operators that the companies that are going to win, in my opinion, in this space are those that are at the front of the wave. You can't afford, in today's world, you can't afford to be 6 steps behind everybody else. It just, the customer doesn't accept it. Going back to my wife in New York, she doesn't accept 9 days.
9 days delivery.
She wants 9 minutes or 9 seconds. And you just can't afford to be behind that curve. You've got to be at the front of the curve. So from a Pos Malaysia perspective, it's doing all the things we're doing and continuing to make sure we provide a great place to work for our employees, a great place for our customers, making sure we focus on service critically. That's the core bread and butter business. But as I said earlier, critically making sure we stay at the front of the curve in terms of use of data, use of technology, and really maximizing the value that's going to create over the next 1, 2, 3 years.
Wow. No, I'll leave it here in the interest of time. I know you'll have to rush, but it's lovely talking to you, Charles. Yeah, thanks a lot for being here.
You're welcome,
Thank you so
Gautam.
much.
Thank you very much. Yeah.